A very good morning, all viewers. Today, after quite a long while, the sun has finally come out, and we have been passing through very difficult circumstances in our country because of the COVID pandemic and the associated problems for the last 8 months in the world and in India, especially ever since the lockdown was introduced in the last 5 months. The times have become more and more difficult. Well, talking about COVID, the scientists have been trying a lot, we all know, to discover a vaccine or to find out if any other treatment options are available. But so far, we are not succeeded. And still, the only options available to us are to observe the social distancing, use of face masks, and hand washing techniques or other sanitary options. Now, talking about hand washing, I'm reminded of some of the olden times, and there used to be a scientist by the name of Ignaz Semmelweis. I don't know how many of you have heard of Ignaz Semmelweis, but he was a very famous scientist who lived in Europe long back, and today I'm just reminded about him because of another reason. We have with us today the guest of our session, that is Prof Subramanium Vaidyanathan, the author of the book The Man with Clean Hands, the Semmelweis Saga. So before I introduce Professor Subramaniam Vaidyanathan, just let me tell you something about this book. Now, this book is published by DC Books and it is easily accessible. It can be downloaded easily on the DC Books app on your tabs or mobile phones or to your desktop computers or to your laptops. It's also reasonably priced. It's only 150 rupees, and digital version as well as the hard copies are available and easily available. Now, this book is essentially about Semmelweis, the life history of Semmelweis, but we will discuss more about that with Professor Subramaniam Vaidyanathan. Now, Professor Subramaniam Vaidyanathan is a well-known figure. Most of his students, there is no need for any introduction to him. He's a very famous teacher and probably one among the most renowned teachers Kerala Medical Colleges has produced. And he has practiced essentially most of his career in Kottayam Medical College and later on after his retirement in Amrita Institute of Medical Science, Kochi. Now, I am also reminded of a story by one of my colleagues, a biochemistry professor, who said once that many times we don't listen to his classes but just simply keep on looking at him. Jokes apart, he is a very sincere and very committed teacher, and we are all very blessed to be his students and to have been trained under him. So let me introduce Professor Subramaniam Vaidyanathan to you.
Thank you very much, Kanan. Good morning to all of you. I bring to you greetings from Venus, a house at Kottayam. And thank you, Kanan, for introducing the topic and my hero, Ignaz Philip Semmelweis. It's a pleasure for me to be with all of you, and hopefully this session will be useful and fruitful for all of us.
Now, you just heard from Professor Subramaniam Vaidyanathan. So now what we are going to discuss today is we just want to have some candid conversations about the book as such. Of course, we know a little bit from social media and all, but we are further want to know about you so a little bit more detail, because many of my colleagues have been asking, why don't you give us some more details about the book? That's really the objective of having this particular session. So we just want you to give you some insights about what made you write this book and how you came to this particular topic. So first of all, how did you what is your association with Semmelweis? Now, many of us are heroes and in our life. So how did Semmelweis become your hero?
I don't know. I was fascinated by this particular person ever since I'm a third year student at Tiruvallur Medical College. My brother, Rangaswamy, who is a well-renowned orthopedic surgeon, and he was also the former Vice Chancellor of the Sri Ramachandra Medical University, Chennai. Both of us were members of the University Library at Toronto. During one of our visits to the library, the chief librarian came down to us, handed over a book to us and said, "You medical students should read this book." I opened this book and found that it was Martin Thompson's The Cry and the Covenant, a book based on the life story of Semmelweis. I went back home that day, sat throughout night, the whole night. I spent reading this book. It was so exciting. At the end of it, I was so fascinated by the life story of this great personality that has totally altered my thinking, my philosophy, and my approach to life altogether totally. And ever since I came to know of Semmelweis, he was my top idol and top hero, and I think I have forgotten about all the other figures in the history of medicine. And to me, Semmelweis is the gold standard.
Okay. So is that what prompted you? So, and is it related to the COVID pandemic as well? Because we all know that Semmelweis is related to hand washing. That's the main association of. That's the reason why Semmelweis is known. So, is it the reason why? So, the COVID pandemic also had an influence to produce this work during this particular time?
Certainly, absolutely. Because all of us know that the pandemic is in full fury now, and we have very little options to control this, except what is now referred to as the social vaccination, under which hand washing is one of the most important components, apart from physical distancing and using a face mask. I would say that the single most important step is hand hygiene. A clean hand is a safe hand. Now, this message is carried across the universe, globally now. And even the ordinary public is well versed with the steps of hand washing. But very few people, including medical professionals, have known that the actual technique of hand washing was introduced in the hospital practice for the first time by Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis. So I thought this is the right moment for me to project my hero in the world. This is the right opportunity and this is the right environment for me to project the story of Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis and how he stood for truth and how he sacrificed his life for this simple act of hand washing. So that's why I probably thought this is the right time for me to come out with this book. Although he has been in my mind for a long, long time.
We students do still remember the days when you used to teach us the steps of hand hygiene during the undergraduate days. And yes, you were very passionate even at that time, and you used to insist that this has to be done methodically, otherwise you can't enter the operation theatre.
Yes, certainly. Not only operation theatre, in a regular ward practice, I'm convinced that clean hands is the single most important strategy to prevent hospital-acquired infection. Not the use of the expensive antibiotics, because I know that millions of dollars are spent on evolving newer generation of antibiotics to combat infection. But for me, the simple act of preventing infection by keeping your hands safe and clean would be the single most important step. And that's where Semmelweis' contribution comes in.
Now, coming to that, there are so many books about Semmelweis. You yourself have recommended to your students about the book called The Cry and the Covenant by Martin Thompson. Now, how is your book different from other books, including the Morton Thompson's book, and how is it unique? What are the features which will make a reader say that this is Prof Vaidyanathan's book? So, what would you?
Well, it's a very difficult question for me to answer because why a person likes a particular book is a pure personal preference. If you ask me, I would still say that The Cry and the Covenant would be the most appropriate book to know about the life story of Semmelweis, and therefore, without any hesitation, I would recommend to any person this particular book. Now, if you ask me what is so special about my book, well, I have lots of answers or lots of reasons why. One of the important reasons is that it's a very, I have given a lot of personal accounts. I have received lots of feedback about this book from several reviewers and my friends. But to me, one of the most important reasons, one of the most important areas which they are not covered up adequately is the relationship between grandfather and grandson. In this book, I have very openly discussed my life with my two grandsons and how they are important to me and what difference they made in our lives, Ishan and Advait. Now, this is one area which I am proud of, and this is one area which I have projected in my book, which unfortunately has escaped the attention of many of the reviewers. So I would say that this is one of the important reasons why I would recommend my book to you.
Yeah, obviously, you're very attached to your grandchildren, and Adi especially can't bear separation from you. We all know that.
Both of them, Adi as well as Ishan. Like any other grandfather, I am attached to them. Very simple.
Now, another thing is that the book, The Cry and the Covenant, is also not very easily available because one of the things is more like a older generation book and it's not easily available. And even if it's available on Amazon, it's costs quite a fortune.
It's expensive.
15,000 rupees or something.
Right, it's expensive.
And even then, it has to be produced against order, so it is not easily available. And there are also other books about Semmelweis, but I'm sure that you have used all the references to produce this particular work. You might have reviewed all the books and then come up with this small version of his biography.
Yes, in fact, I have extensively reviewed Semmelweis literature, both biographical books as well as several websites as well as journal articles published during the last maybe 10 to 20 years. Now, one thing I found about all these books is that in spite of going through all this, I could not get a total picture about his personality because there are lots of dark areas or episodes in his life and career which was not properly explained. So, at the end of all perusal of all these documents, I could not get a comprehensive picture about the life of Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis. So, I thought my readers should get a very lucid, simple, sequential portrayal of his life story. And that's how I came to, I thought that I would do it myself, and that's how this book came into being.
Now, coming to that, what kind of a person was Semmelweis? Was he like a very friendly person, or we don't expect a friendly person, but what kind of a person was he? Because he was born in Budapest, of course, but he lived in Vienna, which is considered the cultural capital of Europe, and probably at that time Vienna was something like the epicenter of Europe. Europe represented Vienna at that time. So what kind of a person was Semmelweis? Did he have some other hobbies, or was he totally dedicated to his profession? Was he something like a loner, just living by himself? What exactly was his personality?
Actually, Semmelweis is an extremely complex personality. The world has seen only one facet of his personality, and that is his obsession with hand washing. Now, if you read through the Semmelweis literature, you will find that his earlier days, especially his student days in the medical schools, he was an extremely happy personality. Very happy, very jolly, enjoying life, music, wine, women, just like any other medical student of his time. But as we went through the crisis in his professional life, when the profession refused to accept his concept of safe hands, clean hands concept, clean hands, safe hands concept, he had to rub with his superiors, and this constant friction made him an extremely morphed his personality to a very rude person with lot of high self-esteem, hubris, and a deprecating attitude towards his colleagues. And you find this sharp contrast in the life of Semmelweis in his early years and his later years. And unfortunately, the world has seen only this phase of his character, the late Semmelweis in his late years. This is very unfortunate because he was really a very amicable personality, very jolly and happy person in the early phase of his career.
So it was this dedication to the objective which he had, which made him like seemingly.
Yes, he was a bold person. He was unafraid to speak the truth, because those were years when the medical profession believed the concept that doctors are gentlemen and gentlemen's hands are clean. But here came a man and he is proclaimed that you've got dirty hands and you're killing women. And that is what made his life miserable in the midst of his professional colleagues.
No, many of us are quite taken back by some of these stories when another person is with a similar history is Vincent van Gogh. There's another famous book on Vincent van Gogh as well by Irving Stone, the biography, like the story. These personalities seem more or less like similar kind of personalities. So probably they were happy, but when they were like consumed by something which they wanted to do and they had an objective, so they became so much attached to that they probably forgot the entire world and used to have delusional thoughts and all. So I think Semmelweis also had a rather bad end. He became something like a sort of like a mad person in the end.
Absolutely, because the world has not seen the true character behind these two personalities. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between Vincent van Gogh and Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis. The bottom line, they were not successful, quote unquote, during their lifetime. And all the accolades, prizes, everything, honors came to them posthumously. But if you look at, for example, Van Gogh, he painted in the hot sun, and one of his most famous paintings were the Potato Eaters. And he never sold a single painting even during his lifetime. But in his heart of heart, he was a very happy person. Maybe the world would declare him as a mad person. Same thing happened to Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis. He was obsessively concerned with the control of puerperal fever, that is the childbed fever, where women die soon after childbirth. And he said that only thing which can prevent the puerperal fever from killing the women is keep the doctor's hands clean. And that was the passion for this man.
It seems like something like astonishing that doctors didn't realize it at that time. Now it's like even mothers tell to children, clean your hands and come and eat food. It's almost like natural thing to do. But then at that time, even doctors refused to do that before seeing patients is something unthinkable at this time. Yeah, but that is probably the beauty of the scientific literature as well. Now, many things which we think is very simple there have been personalities behind these seemingly simple discoveries, and the life of these persons also is remarkable, reveals remarkable secrets about those times as well as the history of medicine or mankind as well. So,
Yes, it looks ridiculous for us to think of a doctor approaching a patient with an unclean hand. See? But then, remember, Semmelweis lived in an era, the pre-germ era.
something like the 17th century.
Actually, speaking the 19th century,
19th century, yeah.
1840s,
yeah.
1850s, when bacteria were not identified, when the cause of infection was not clear, Pasteur has not come, Lister was not there. It took a lot of time after Semmelweis to identify the source of infection as microorganisms, what we call as bacteria, viruses. But then remember, he lived in an era when these were not known.
So even the germ theory of disease came afterwards.
It was not established at all. So people didn't know that a dirty hand can carry infection to your patient.
So again, speaking about stories like this, it seems like something like a celebration of their defeat or their unsuccessful lives and misery. But really, it is not true, I feel, because these are like personalities who have really changed the face of humanity or science, and we really have to look at these kind of biographies to understand what the society was and how the society has progressed. If you look at the progression of medicine, so these are, I think, like pillars or milestones of.
Certainly, yes. Semmelweis was a major figure in the modernization of medical knowledge. See, he lived at a time when cobwebs were used to control bleeding. The doctor's apron started with pus and blood, and they refused to launder it because the more heavily it is contaminated, the more experienced the doctor is. That's the concept. But then things change after Semmelweis, after Pasteur, after Lister, and we have now come to realize the germ theory completely. So that is where the story of Semmelweis as a major beacon, as a major anchor for the medical profession.
Any particular incident or any particular section of the book which you find personally which you found personally gratifying to write, or thinking back, like very important aspects, very important parts of the book, which from your perspective, from your author's perspective, is there anything you would like to highlight?
I don't know, but whenever you write a biography, whenever you portray the life story of any person, whether it is Semmelweis, X, Y, for that matter, there are two ways of doing it. One I would call a documentary approach, where you give details about his life, the year, the date, a chronological sequence, very absolute facts, and portray from birth to death. Now this becomes not a reader-friendly,
like an impersonal
impersonal account, but factually true. Now the other method is to go for what we call a fictionalized approach, or what my friend Professor Iqbal in his foreword to this book mentioned as an Irvingstonian approach, where you take a specific incident in the life of an individual and sort of develop it into a dramatic event. Of course, a writer has the freedom to do that. Now, the point is, for example, if you take Martin Thompson's Cry and the Covenant, I would say that it is too much of a fictionalized portrayal. If you take Sinclair's biography, which is the most authentic biography about Semmelweis, it belongs to the first category of documentation, where too much of factual details are provided. I have chosen a compromise. of the two. I've chosen both, adopted both these policies. I've given factual details. In certain areas, I have dramatized, I have fictionalized.
Obviously, he's your hero. So,
Absolutely. When you read the book, you will capture those areas. In fact, I have indicated under the notes as well. So I have used my writer's freedom to expand some of those areas, which I think you will realize when you go through the book. And also, one of the areas where I have taken the liberty is to bring in vignettes of the COVID-19 pandemic. I've sort of interspersed these details with the Semmelweis story. So I would feel that these are the two areas where I have chosen my writer's freedom to compile this book.
so obviously, many of us who have read this book have found that it's a very exciting book and very nicely written, beautifully written by Prof Vaidyanathan. Now, Prof Vaidyanathan, many of his students would know he's a very accomplished person. He has many achievements to his credit, many awards to his credit, and he is essentially was a vascular surgeon by training. He got a fellowship in vascular surgery from USA, and he has been awarded, including the Best Surgeon Award from the Association of Surgeons of India. He has got many awards from Kerala. Also, he has got the awards. So he's a very accomplished person. He has done lots of original research work. So we expected something like this book only from you, and it has really come out well. And I would really recommend this to the viewers to go through, have a look at this. Now the details of how to purchase this book, etc., can be found in the links which are given down below along with this video. So you can also if you are interested in the hard copy, you can purchase a hard copy. Now it's available on discount, 10% discount, or you can have the e-book if you prefer reading that. But I would definitely recommend this book to all who are interested in biographies, or also how the story has, how he has interwoven the story along with the COVID, that is the current crisis. It's a really beautiful way he has interwoven that story. So I'd like to thank Prof Vaidyanathan for producing this book, and of course I am sure he has got a lot of support from his family also. I mean, he is my father, of course, and my elder brother, my mother, all of us are helping hopefully to bring up this work, especially my mother. And I'd like to thank you for producing this beautiful work, and I hope that you would come up with more such works in the future. Anything else you have plans currently, or are you working on any other projects currently? Or?
Well, before that, my plans, I would like to say, since you said about your mother, she's my wife, I must really thank her, because when I was writing this particular book, I went through terrific emotional crisis, because I relived the life of Semmelweis, his happiness, his agony, his ecstasy. So I was on an emotional roller coaster ride of elation and depression. And during this time, I was unapproachable, I was miserable, I was, emotionally disturbed. And she put up with all my mood fluctuations and mood swings during this time, and I must really thank her for the support which she has given me, and that is a very important factor. Apart from all of you who have contributed in the production of this book, I would say that her support is the single most important component which helped me to steer through these difficult times, personally disturbing, I won't call it difficult, disturbing times. I don't know whether I would be able to produce another book, because this book came from my heart. And for me to compile another book or another anything productive, artistic, with so much of artistic skill, it should really strike my heart. Maybe there are a couple of areas which is disturbing me, and I might do it, I don't know. It's too early, too premature for me to say anything about that.
Incidentally, I forgot to mention, this is Prof Vaidyanathan's third book. His first book is a book on chronic varicose veins, venous disorders, which he has produced along with his students. This is published by Springer. And the second book is in fact for a private circulation. It's a travelogue, which some of his tours which he did along with his classmates and all, and I believe that it is very close to his heart. So I would like him to speak about some of these work also, and as well as you said that something might touch you, so I think you have something in your mind as well.
In fact, this is a very exciting book for me. I enjoyed writing this book along with Rajam and my other classmate, NSD Raju. This book is about our tour about our means of 1963 MBBS students batch at Trivandrum Medical College. We made 3 international tours to Colombo, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Cambodia. And this book is a compilation of our experience of the tour. And this is a nice book with nice photographs and our day-to-day experience of this tour. And I really enjoyed authoring this book. And this is one of my favorites. And we will formally possibly publish it after this all this fanfare about this Semmelweis book is completed. I hope to take it up for a formal publication. Yes, something is disturbing me now, because now that I have gotten rid of Semmelweis from my system, another person has entered my heart. I won't call this is the person, this is a dead person, it's a cadaver. This is a cadaver on whom I have done my first dissection in the anatomy classes. Way back in 1963, again in Trivandrum Medical College. When I was doing the dissection on this body, Manikandan, who is the expert in embalming of cadavers in the Medical College Trivandrum, came to me quietly one day and told me the entire story about this particular cadaver who was living a few weeks before that. It was a very sad story, and that touched my heart. And this particular gentleman, cadaver, is residing in my heart and disturbing me severely. So maybe I have to let him out also, just like I let out Semmelweis from my system. My bucket list of desires is slowly dwindling, nothing more. So maybe this might be the cadaver, maybe the last thing which I plan to do. I don't know, maybe, may not be. I can't promise.
Anyway, thank you, Prof Vaidyanathan, for spending this much time, and we really hope that you come up with the new work as well. It was really a nice experience talking with you about the evolution of the book, how the Semmelweis book came out, and I hope that you would find it interesting, and I wish that all of you would read this book, and also please post your comments about the book as well. So we also need to know what you think about the book as well. So thank you very much, Prof Vaidyanathan, and have a nice day. Thank you.